Welcome to Crossed Over, the show where you hear stories of people who have been transformed by Jesus Christ, who have truly crossed over from death to life.
Welcome to Crossed Over, Episode 6. I am Jeff Johnson, the host of Crossed Over, and I am so overjoyed and honored that you have taken the time to listen in or watch, whether you're joining us by YouTube or Rumble or listening to us on podcasts, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you for taking the time to hear stories of people's personal faith in Jesus and how they've been changed as they followed Christ. And the theme verse from the Bible for us that has encouraged me and us as we've done these episodes for Crossed Over comes from John 5:24. Jesus' words, "Very truly I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes in him who sent me has eternal life and will not be judged, but is crossed over from death to life." So thank you for joining us today. And we have a special guest, and I'll get to our special guest in just a moment. But before we do, I do want to, as we've done the last number of episodes, give a shout out to the River City Church in Vancouver, Washington, and one of our title sponsors. And really, this is a one-way sponsorship. We just want to give them a shout out because we believe in the good work that they're doing for the Lord there in the Pacific Northwest. And they have a effort to plant churches in the Pacific Northwest, and they've created a company called Church Plant Coffee that will help to fund some of God's work there in the Pacific Northwest. It's called Church Plant Coffee, Gospel Impact with Every Sip. And if you happen to just be listening, you can't see what I'm seeing on the screen, what our viewers that watch it are seeing. But their website for Church Plant Coffee is simply churchplantcoffee.com. I encourage you, if you love Jesus, you love coffee, perhaps you just love coffee, support them, churchplantcoffee.com. Also, if you, however you're joining us today, I encourage you to subscribe, to like, to share, continue to listen. You are the ones that can really help spread the word of mouth, share it on social media. The more you share, the more we can encourage people with the good news of Jesus Christ. Okay, well, that leads into our time. It's episode 6. As I shared last week with interviewing our student pastor, Jason Mills here at First Baptist, there's a trend in the early portion of our Crossed Over series is we have shared, we interviewed, we have brought on the show the leadership here at First Baptist Church in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, where I serve as mission pastor. And today is no different. Today, we kind of wrap it up with our preschool director. Her name is Jackie Fisher. And we are honored and excited. I'm glad that she's taken the time this morning. We're recording this morning to be with us this week. So I'm going to bring her in. Jackie Fisher, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you.
Good.
And we're just going to have a conversation today. And I'm glad that you've joined us today. Excuse me. Today we're going to break barriers. As those of you can see, and maybe you can tell by hearing her voice, my guest today is the first female on the Crossed Over series. And she is a special friend of mine. She's our preschool director here at the church, as I mentioned. She's married to Dick Fisher. She's the mother of 3 adult children, Stephen, Crystal, and Cheryl. And one could say that this is the All My Children episode. I don't know if any of our listeners out there like the soap operas as my mom does. But Jackie Fisher, through the years, has taken care of all of my children here at the church at some point in time. And so, Jackie, thank you for loving on the kids of our church, but thank you for loving on my kids through the years as well.
It's my pleasure for sure.
Well, we've brought you on because, as our listeners, I hope, know, this show is an opportunity where I can have a conversation. I can interview people where they can share about their story of faith, how they followed Christ, what God's done in their life. And it's no different for you. You know, we want to have a conversation today with you that that gives you the chance to share with our listeners really of what Jesus means to you, what he's done for you, and how God's changed your life when you've crossed over from death to life. So let's back up, Jackie, for our viewers, for our listeners. Share with us now. As you shared with me a little while ago, I wasn't aware of this, but your maiden name is Ballard, and you grew up in our area. We live in the Piedmont of North Carolina. You grew up in the Gastonia area. Share with us a little bit about your childhood. What was it like for Jackie Ballard growing up?
Okay. I was born actually in Lincoln, North Carolina, and when I was 3 years old, we moved to Gastonia, where I lived the rest of my life until I actually went away to college and got married and moved away. Um, it was a good childhood. Um, I had a wonderful mom and dad. My dad was very strict on us, and you didn't do a whole lot other than what he asked you to do because you really didn't want to have to pay the consequences for that. Uh, I often said I don't know whether sometimes we respected him out of love, fear, or respect, but either way, he got what he wanted out of us. Um, I am the oldest of three children. I have a sister that's 3 years younger than I am, and I have a brother that's 18 years younger than me. So that was kind of an interesting thing when he popped into our lives. Um, but I grew up, like I said, in a good home. My mom was the spiritual leader of our church. My dad went to church with us for the most part, but he was just there. Didn't really participate. He didn't really go to Sunday school or anything. He would come to worship and sit with us, but actually, my mom was the one who really um, took us to church, and I've gone as long as I can remember to church. We had Sunday school, and back then, I'm telling my age probably, but we had training union, which we don't even have anymore. We had, I was in sunbeams, and a lot of people probably don't even know what sunbeams were, but we went to sunbeams. And then as I was older, I went to GAs and passed off all the steps, the maiden, lady in waiting, queen with the scepter, the whole 9 yards. I got it. And I was cleaning out at home just a few days ago and found my scepter that I had when I was in GAs. Um, but
Okay,
anyway, my childhood.
I'm going to interrupt you there
Okay,
because I'm not as familiar. What is the scepter that you got for GAs? What is that?
it's we had like steps. You
Okay.
passed off your GA steps, and you got they were like you had the maiden, lady in waiting, queen with the scepter, queen regent, all that. It's just steps. It's not GAs. You can still they don't do it that same way anymore,
Gotcha.
but there
Gotcha.
are things that you can pass off. And we had big uh, coronations when all the girls had to wear the white dresses, and it was a big deal. Somewhere at home, I've got a picture of that. I have to bring it and let you see it. But
We should have had that ahead of time.
yeah,
You're involved, very involved. It sounds like in the church from when you were very little.
yes,
What was it like at home? I guess your dad worked. Did your mom work outside the home or just stay at home? And what was that environment like at the house?
Well, mom and dad both worked, and you know, outside the home. And of course, when we had a lady who came to our house, her name was Daisy. I never will forget. She was the sweetest, sweetest lady, and we loved her. And she kept my sister and I when we were little until we were able to go to school. And she, took care of us, and we just loved her. And but with my sisters and of course my brother wasn't there and our friends, um, we would play, outside at home. And in our backyard we had this big tree, and that seemed to be the gathering place out there in the backyard of that tree. Because believe it or not, I was a very shy child. Um, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to. I wanted people to spend the night with me, but I didn't want to go to their house. I did not even hardly spend the night with my grandparents because I was just that shy and that much of a homebody. Uh, to know me now, you probably wouldn't ever believe that, but I was a very shy child.
Yeah, that's hard for me to believe because, I've known you for the last 20, 21 years, and I never would have guessed that. I think we share
Right.
that in common, as I've told you in person, that a lot of people don't. That's part of me. When I was younger as well, I was very reserved, very shy. I would always want someone else to see someone else do something before I would even consider doing it.
Absolutely.
So, um, personality, family life, I guess, you shared about your siblings, particularly the very big gap between your youngest sibling. So generally, a happy childhood for you. In your family.
Yes, it was. Um, like I said, I had a lot of friends, and we would play kickball and in the street out front of for our house till dark, and they would call us in. It wasn't like it is now, where when our neighborhood it was a
Yeah.
lot, not much traffic at all. We would get out there and play till dark, and then Mom would call us in and say it's time to come in for dinner.
So, and you've heard the phrase tomboy. Would you consider yourself a tomboy? Were you out there in the dirt playing with the boys, and you played
Oh no.
kickball?
Oh no, I was much too shy for that. I didn't go. I played in the road in front of my house. That was about as far as I went.
That was your playground, I guess.
That's it. That's it. And the
Yeah,
tree.
I can remember. I think that seems like something of the past. Kind of the neighborhood being out playing so much. I can remember being gone all day in my greater neighborhood on
Mhm.
riding my bike, and unfortunately, we don't have that too much these days.
No, no. Just had to be careful not to hit the cars that were parked on. If the cars were parked on the road, then you got in big trouble if you hit a car.
Big trouble, big trouble. Well, it
Big
sounds like your dad was similar to my father, who was definitely a disciplinarian, and you did not want to cross my dad. And it sounded like your father was much the same.
Right. And my mother was very soft, very mild, very meek, very soft spoken. She could get you with a look, but I don't ever remember hearing my mother raise her voice to us. She didn't have to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as we've heard with some of our previous episodes, you're not the only one, and perhaps many that would be listening to this. I know some in our church family. You grew up in a Christian home, what we consider a Christian family. You were in church, as you shared. From a young age, you were being taught the Bible. You were in Bible study. You're going to church. You're in Sunday school. You're in GAs. You got the scepter. All these things. We know, of course, Jackie, you and I know that just because you're in church and just because you grow up in a Christian family, it doesn't make you a Christian. Just because you're baptized doesn't make you a Christian. Those are outward evidences of someone who's followed Christ. So share with us and a little bit more about how old were you, a little bit more of when you followed Jesus in faith. Share with us if you would.
Okay. I was actually raised at Unity Baptist Church in Gastonia, where I went, like I said, my whole life until I went to college. I was baptized, accepted Christ at Vacation Bible School when I was 9 years old, and was baptized by Reverend Woodall there at Unity. I continued to grow. However, when I became a Christian, it was not a big, startling, life changing, life altering decision. I mean, I knew what I had done, and I prayed the prayer, and like I said, I was baptized, but there was not a whole lot of real changes because I was what most people would call a good girl, home doing what I needed to do. I guess I was so shy, and I sure wasn't going to try anything to do anything that would get myself in trouble. Um, so it continued with that until I graduated from high school, and then I went away to school um, to Presbyterian Hospital School of Nursing in Charlotte. And that's when I really felt my life change. I was always kind of, was quiet. I was always around people who didn't make bad choices, really. You heard about it, but that was not something that happened in the circle of friends and where I was. But when I went to Presbyterian, it was a totally new experience for me. Because I was living away from home in a dorm, had the freedom to make decisions that, I always had my mom and dad to to go to if I had any questions or anything. And I saw some people who made some bad choices. My first roommate at Presbyterian, dad was a minister. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful because she and I will hit it off just perfect and we'll be great. Well, was I wrong? She kind of, you heard that saying they went wild. She kind of went and did some things she shouldn't have been doing with some people she shouldn't have been doing them with. And I think she just kind of had been sheltered so much at home and had the tight reins on her that she just kind of went uh, the wrong way. But anyway, eventually we got another roommate, which that worked out very well. But I had to learn to look at things and think of things and make my own decisions and pray more than had ever prayed to keep me grounded in what I was needed to learn and to do.
Well, let's talk about that for just a few minutes, if you're willing. So you're in college. You shared that you're shy. You're not outgoing, but you're moved away from home for the first time. You're on your own. That can be a very intimidating and a scary thing. So,
Yes.
particularly, it happens a lot when a young person kind of grows up in a Christian family. You're right. There's not a tremendous amount of life transformation as far as on the external. But
Right.
God really, it doesn't mean that God's not working in your life through the years, particularly after you became a Christian. But now you're in college. You mentioned your prayer life really changed a lot. What were some of the things that you sensed God, how He moved in your life, what the ways that He grew you, how He stretched you, how He poured Himself in your life? During those college years, how did you really see some of your personal growth as far as your faith is concerned?
Well, I had to rely on him and depend on him to guide me. And I felt his presence with me, and I didn't ever feel like I was alone because I know he was always there. I felt lonely, but I relied on him, and he was always with me. He put some good uh, Christian girls in my path at school, and so that was really really wonderful. Um, I had to when I went over to the hospital to work, the classes, I had to pray about that because that was hard, being away and with all the noise in the dorm and stuff. That took some getting used to it. I had to constantly stay focused in what I was doing. And then when I went over to actually do some clinicals, um, you know, I was exposed to things and saw things and, you know, being shy, it was a little hard, but I had to pray for wisdom and for guidance and for strength to do what I know I was called to do at that time, which was be a nurse and minister to those that are sick and in need.
Yeah. Well, I think what you share kind of speaks to how the Lord, how God really works in our life. Sometimes it's a lot of the internal things that perhaps may not be as evident outwardly, but knowing you, even just sharing, it sounds like in a lot of ways you had God to lean on, was about the only thing you could lean on, that
Right.
became your rock, so to speak. Well, I know Jackie Fisher, and many people know you today, but you shared what maybe a lot of people who met you in the last few years don't know, is that by trade you studied to be a nurse. How
Yes.
long did you became a nurse, and how long did you serve, I guess, as a nurse and work as a nurse?
Oh, mercy. Well, I graduated. I'm gonna tell how old I am now. I graduated from Presbyterian in 1971, and I moved to Virginia then when after I got married, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then I retired about about 10 years ago, totally, completely. And those years I spent nursing, uh, some at the bedside, some in a offers type capacity, but
Yeah.
still working with patients and charts and physicians for all those years.
Well, that's, I think our nurses are the unsung heroes. Nothing against the doctors, but the nurses, without them, I don't think our hospitals and medical system would work. And
Totally agree.
I think it, just because I know you and I know your servant's heart, it seems that most of the nurses that I have met have had that in their spirit, and that's their makeup is someone who serves. Well, I know that you are married. Now, I don't want to give your husband a big head or anything,
Oh,
but
mercy.
but I truly love your husband. Jackie is married to Dick Fisher, and Dick Fisher is by trade an electrician, and many people in our area know him because he he taught here at one of our local schools, local community college, for years and years. But tell us how you and Dick met and when you guys got married. Share about that.
Okay. We went to the same church. Dick moved there, or his family moved their membership to Unity Baptist when Dick was 7 years old. And of course, then he was there until we got married as well. So we went to school together. We went to church together from 7 years, since we were children, all the way through. We went to high school together at Hunter House High School in Gastonia, and graduated the same year. I always tease him. He's older than me. He's about 3 months older than me, but I tell him he's the oldest one. But so we graduated college. Dick got a job in Richmond, Virginia for the Virginia Power Company, and so he moved on up there when we graduated. And well, let me back up. He went to Gaston College for 2 years. Then he moved up to Virginia, and I was still in nursing school when he moved up there.
Now, tell us the time frame, because I know you shared this with me, between when you got married and when you moved away.
Okay. Well, I graduated from Presbyterian Hospital School of Nursing one Saturday, which was the 7th of December, 7th of August. I got married the 21st of August and moved to Richmond, Virginia, the next Saturday. So in 3 weeks, I had graduated, got married, and moved away from home. Now remember, I was this shy girl who was always never went away from home, and here I was leaving my family, all my friends, everything I knew, to move to Richmond, Virginia.
So many who are watching outside who don't live in the Carolinas are listening. Presbyterian is probably what, an hour and a half from here, perhaps?
Probably about an hour, a little
Okay,
over an hour,
an hour away. To now you're moving
8 hours away.
8 hours away. So God's stretching you. A lot of life change going on. And Dick is working in Virginia. You guys get married. You move there. Share with us, in those few years that you guys were in Virginia, how did you see God work in you guys, perhaps some of the churches that you were involved in? And I know that God sent some people in your life who really helped you and encouraged you being so far from home. So share with us a little about that.
Right. Well, we moved to Richmond, Virginia, and I went, of course, willingly because I was married to him. And I knew before I went up there that Dick would do some traveling for the company, which was fine. What I didn't expect was for him to go into work on Monday. Now, remember, we arrived on Saturday. He went to work on Monday, and they wanted to send him out of town the next day. Well, of course, that didn't sit too well with him, and I was just scared to death because, number one, I didn't even know where anything was. I couldn't even get myself to the grocery store, and I couldn't even drive his car. I did not have a car of my own. We had one car, and it was a straight drive. So, needless to say, I quickly had to learn to drive a car, find out where things were, so that I could do what I needed to do, because he was going to be leaving the next week to go out of town. And in Richmond, I didn't have a job. So I made it my business the week he was gone to know where the hospital was and some different places. And I went and found me a job because that was awful. I was, lonely. I didn't know anybody, had no friends, and it was scary being that far away from home. And I couldn't just pick up the phone and call my mother. I mean, I could, but we had to pay for it because it was long distance. So it was none of this cell phones and all that stuff, though. I couldn't call her very often because that got quite expensive. But that's another time that God stretched me, and I had to learn to lean on Him. Many a nights, I cried myself to sleep because I was um, so lonely. But that's when, He told me, He said, be still, and know that I am God. And He took care of me during those times. Um, I was able to get a job, which was wonderful. It was close to where we lived, in the apartment where we lived. So that was nice. I wasn't out. I was able to work during the day, which was also wonderful because I didn't have evenings and nights and have to be up there in Richmond, Virginia in the dark um, coming in. So I was so busy at first trying to stay busy so that I didn't have to think and I was just doing whatever. And I remember one night he said, just be still. And so that was a change. I mean, I knew he was with me. And from then on, it was just like, it was different. When I got scared and I felt like I was just gonna, lose it, um, I learned to sit and be still. And I still do that to this day when, things get too bad. I say, okay, I'm done for a little bit. Let me just sit down and be still.
Well, you didn't stay in Virginia because
No.
obviously you're here in Kings Mountain and back to North Carolina. So, how did God open the door for you guys to come back to this area? Share with us.
Okay, we actually moved to Richmond, and we were there in Richmond almost a year. Then we moved to Fredericksburg, and we were there for a few years. During that time, Stephen was born. Our firstborn was born, and we had joined a church, Spotswood Baptist in Fredericksburg, and that was also a wonderful stepping stone for all of us, for my husband and for Dick and myself, during that time, because we met some godly people, some good Christian people who were strong in their faith and very supportive to us. We also met a nucleus of friends. And one thing and I'll plug Sunday school here, is we had a Sunday school class that was absolutely awesome. But the interesting thing was, Fredericksburg is close to Washington and Dahlgren and all the different bases and different things. So everybody but there was one couple in our Sunday school class that was from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Everybody else was, transit like we were, which really was a nice thing because we all kind of supported and loved on each other, and we were, just like family up there. But anyway, like I said, Steve was born, and then we were home on vacation one year, and we decided it was time to start moving back toward North Carolina. And Dick went and got a job with Cleveland Community College through the process, and we put our house on the market, and we said that was a God thing because his job got the job quickly. Our house sold in a week, and we packed up and moved back to North Carolina and settled here in Kings Mountain.
Well, I'm glad that God opened that door for you to come back to this area.
We are too.
Well, as we kind of wrap up, one of the things that we've done with, I guess, each of our guests on Crossed Over is I want you in a few moments to share perhaps a word of encouragement or challenge to anyone who might be listening to this show, watching the show. There's no doubt in my mind that every person who consider themselves a believer, a Christian, a Jesus follower, has a story. And I know that many people are shy about their story, about how sharing with other people of what God has done in their life. And thank you for sharing, really, in a lot of ways, of how God has been your constant. He's been a rock for you. He is Even in the stillness, as you shared, be still and know that I'm God. God's had His hand on your life. There's no doubt. And I'm here to say that I know God's used you and Dick together, not only to be godly parents, godly grandparents, and also serving in a church environment, really impacting many future generations. So thank you for chasing after the Lord with all your heart. So close for us as we kind of wrap up this show. And to someone, Jackie, that might be listening, that might be watching this, who might be perhaps even the first time they've watched Crossed Over, share to them a word of encouragement or challenge, whatever God's put on your heart. I'm gonna be quiet and let you say what's ever on your mind, on your heart.
Okay. The first thing I would tell them is to trust, and don't be afraid to talk to God and to ask Him what you need, and then to believe that what He says in the Bible is true. What we hear in the Bible is real and true, and He will always be there for you. We just have to sometimes be willing to let Him in and to listen to what He has to say. Be still and know that I am God would be one thing that I would tell folks, because He's there. He always has been and He always will be. But sometimes we're the one who don't open the door and let Him in and allow Him to minister to us the way He really wants to, and to love us the way He really wants to love us. Another thing I would like to share to parents, as a grandmother, as a mother and a grandmother, I would encourage parents to share with their children. Spend time with your children. Set an example for your children. Model your Bible study, your prayer life, all that. Model for your children. They're going to learn stuff whether you want them to or not. And a lot of times they learn what you don't want them to necessarily learn. You're going to hear them repeat what you don't want to hear them repeat. But part of that, I think, is growing up. And a lot of that, the majority of that, as parents and grandparents, we need to model and we need to teach those children. And the ones who know me know I have a heart for children. And I always say, I've taught many classes over the years. And one thing I tell them, be sure to tell them that Jesus loves them. And when you're teaching your children, you're talking to your children, you got to keep the main thing, and that main thing is Jesus.
I couldn't say it any better than that. Thank you for that word. Thank you for the word of challenge. Jackie, one thing that I know we don't have a lot of time to share about that. One thing I'm hearing a lot in people's stories is that a lot of times it was just the mom in the home that led out spiritually. And moms, we're so thankful for godly moms, but I have a heart for dads that need to step up and really lead out as well in the home. And thank you for challenging both parents, husbands and wives, to not only lead a godly example, but to really model it and teach their kids what's most important, and that's about Jesus. Well, time has flown. It's hard to believe. I think time has flown for us, and we're going to wrap this show up. Jackie Fisher, thank you for being on Crossed Over. I hope that down the road, when we expand some of the things that we do, even having some theme shows, that we'll bring you back to talk about children's ministry or parenting or something like that. But thank you for being with us and sharing your story. It's been a joy and an honor to have you on today.
Thank you so much. It's certainly been my pleasure.
Well, thank you. Well, once again, I'm so grateful that Jackie joined us on episode 6 of Crossed Over. And as we wrap up this show, I do want to remind you that you play a huge part in getting the word out about Crossed Over. Even though, I know I can only share so much on social media, But the more that you listen, the more that you like our posts, the more that you share it and subscribe. When you subscribe, we can personalize our program. We can do different things with our YouTube channel. We can do more. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go on the ratings, give us a rating, share comments. That helps get the word out about Crossed Over. I'm excited about the future of expanding beyond the leadership of our church and sharing with other individuals who are going to come share their story of faith and how they have crossed over from death to life. And as I close, I'll close like I have closed every episode, and episode 6 will not be any different. Don't forget, as long as there's breath in your lungs, you have hope, and hope has a name. And as you heard from our guest today, Jackie Fisher shared, the hope that we have is found in the person that is Jesus Christ. And don't miss his words as we've shared at the start of this episode. Jesus said that if you believe in him, you hear his word, that God will not judge you, but he will come in and give you eternal life, and you will cross over from death to life. So Jesus came that you would have life and life to the full. So my final word to you today is that you would fix your eyes on Jesus. Until next time, take care.